All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome. We are here live on YouTube working on story ideas for a writing contest. Well, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. If you don't know me, my name's Joe Bunting. I am a best-selling author and the founder of The Right Practice. So fun to be here with you. And I also want to introduce Sarah Gribble. Sarah, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Sarah Gribble. I'm a internationally best-selling novelist, which is really cool to
So
say.
fancy.
Um, Award-winning short story writer.
Mhm.
I've had several dozen short stories published. I also do a ton of stuff around the right practice, so you might already know me.
Yeah. If you've been around at The Right Practice for any length of time, you have already met Sarah at some capacity. But this is really fun. We're talking about ideas here today. We're actually going to be workshopping some ideas. So if you're here with us on YouTube right now, maybe you could just check in, say hi in the chat, and also let us know if you've ever participated in a writing contest, if you've sent a short story to a writing contest, and how was that experience for you? Let me know there in the chat on YouTube. This is fun. This is only our second time doing YouTube Live, and I feel like we're still getting the hang of it. So, bear with us as we're figuring out the kinks. But yeah, if you would go ahead and check in there in the chat, that would be super great. All right. So we're going to hear today some ideas, and we're going to give some feedback, maybe on some of your ideas. But first, I just want to mention that we are running a writing contest right now at The Right Practice. I'll share the link to that in the chat. But if that's something that you want to participate in, you have to sign up by Thursday. Thursday is the last day to sign up. This is our spring writing contest. We host a lot of writing contests at The Right Practice, and this is our spring contest. If you missed this one, maybe we'll see you next time. But make sure to sign up for this one by Thursday if you want to participate in that. It's going to be really fun. And with that in mind, I would love to just talk about, Sarah, why should people participate in writing contests before we get into different ideas for how to win a writing contest, and also looking at people's stories. Why are writing contests a good thing to participate in?
I mean, I've done a ton of them at this point. I've been focusing on books the past couple of years, so it's been a little bit since I've entered any. But I used to enter them all the time because for me they were a chance to kind of create something new. And there's like the time frame, you have to get it done within this time frame, and it's just kind of a way to maybe get out of a slump. I used them to get out of a slump like a lot because you get in the slumps like all the time. Or to take a break from a bigger project that I was working on, and just kind of create something new and sort of off the wall and different from what I was working on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an important part, just kind of like getting a chance to work on something new. For me, one of the main reasons why I encourage people to participate in writing contests is because they're such great practice, right? They're a great way to become a better writer. I think practice is something we're obviously really passionate about at The Right Practice. And writing contests are excellent practice because they're kind of like a test. You have this limited period of time to focus on something new, and you're going to be judged on it based on how well of a job you do on that thing, right? And so it puts a lot of focus and energy into the writing process, and gives you some feedback at the end. Feedback is such an important part. We're going to be talking more about feedback later, but I think we all need feedback, and writing contests are a great way to get more feedback. What else? What's another reason people should participate in a writing contest?
So interestingly enough, this is our contest specifically. Not all contests do
Yeah.
this, but interestingly enough, I actually found the right practice because of a writing contest. And I was so broke at the time that coming up with, I wanted to get feedback from the judges, and that is a fee. But I wanted to get feedback, and it was like $10 or something. I don't know what it was, but I was like struggling to be like, oh, I don't know if I want this or not. But came up with the money And the reason that I wanted to do this contest specifically, though, is that you get published. You have the chance to be published in this contest. And at the time, I had been trying to get in anthologies and it wasn't really working. And I really just wanted something to put on my, writer's portfolio of like, yes, I have been published. And this gave me a chance to do that. And the feedback from the judges actually ended up getting me, I got published in another anthology like within a month of doing this contest.
Yeah.
So they like fixed me, put me on the right path for what a story actually is.
On the right path, you might say.
Yeah, on the right path. All the puns, all the time.
Mostly right puns. That's all. No, I think that's such an interesting thing, and it was great to watch you get published and succeed so much after that first contest.
Yeah.
So we can really blame that for you still being around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another reason why I think contests are great are because you can get some cool prizes, right? Usually there's a cash prize in most writing contests, but there's also some intangible prizes, often exposure, right? Along with the line with the publishing part is just general exposure. And then also, there's other interesting perks. Sometimes you'll get connected with agents or literary magazines, or you'll get other free things. And I think that, that's a nice thing. Prizes are nice, right? We all like prizes. What else? Well, give me one more reason why people should participate in a writing contest.
They're fun. I mean, like they really are. It's a short time frame. You pump something out real quick, you get it done. I love finishing things. So like getting something actually done is like really weirdly fun for me. And in ours, you get to connect with an entire writing community because we have the feedback section. So like I met with a ton of people that I'm still friends with now who have helped me launch books and everything, all because of that contest.
Yeah, no, I think that's really an important point. They're fun because you connect with other writers, and also just because writing is fun and doing short story competitions, it's fun. Okay, so now that we know why we should participate in a writing contest, and by the way, just to remind you again, and we'll have this in the description as well, we are currently hosting a writing contest, and we'd love for you to join us. So if you want to participate there, we'll put the link in the chat, and we'll also have it in the description if you're watching the replay of this. But let's talk about some different mistakes that writers make in writing competitions, because I've judged a lot of writing contests. You have judged a lot of writing contests, Sarah. What are some of the most common things that you see people making that keep them from winning a competition?
Not proofreading at all, not editing, period, actually. Which is nice about ours because you basically have to edit, right? Like you have to do this workshopping with it. But not editing at all. I know a lot of people think that editing is like taking the artistic soul out of your work or there's something like that, but you need to edit. People actually need to be able to read it. And it doesn't need to be like, completely perfect, but you actually do need to make an effort to make it readable. The other thing is like they don't follow the guidelines. They don't read guidelines. I've edited anthologies before too, and that's the same thing there with short story anthologies. You need to follow the guidelines, period, no matter what you're doing. This is a profession and you need to treat it that way. And I think the other biggest thing is not following the theme. That drives judges nuts when you just turn in a story. And I mean, it might be a good story, but if it's not on theme, there's a reason we have a theme. It's so that you have some kind of metric to baseline everybody's stories. And if you don't follow the theme, it's really annoying. And putting the words of the theme in the story does not mean that it's necessarily following the theme. That always seems like it's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole or something like that, where you're just like, no, it is on theme because I use the words. It's almost gaslighty for the judges. So yeah, follow the theme, follow the guidelines, try and proofread as best as you can.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Just the basics, right?
Yeah.
Just making sure you're doing the basics. It's hard, but so important. I just want to check in the chat because I see a bunch of people here in the chat on YouTube, which is awesome. Welcome. I saw from Ray, not Lydia, has never participated in a short story competition before. You should do it. It's a great experience. Join us. Claudia has never entered a writing contest. This is your chance, Claudia. That's awesome. George says, best is the right practice feedback on entry. However rough the feedback might be on a specific story. I think that's a really good point, George. Yeah, we all need feedback, right? And it's not always comfortable to get that feedback, but it makes you a better writer, right? Joan participated in the Sun writing contest. Absolutely, that counts. That's awesome. Yeah, if you're in the chat, if you're watching this, we would love to hear from you. Have you ever participated in a writing contest? Let us know, and we'll keep checking in there in the chat. All right, so here's another mistake that I see writers make frequently, is that they have too much going on in their stories, right? They're trying to accomplish too much. And if you have been following the right practice last week, I got some feedback from Sarah that I had too much going on in my story idea. So this is not a mistake that just new writers make. I've been doing this for a while, and I am constantly trying to put too much into my stories. But it's very normal. And short stories are short. You do not have that much time to accomplish what you need to in the story. And that means, if you have too many scenes, if you have too many characters, if you have subplots that you're trying to pull off in a very short story, like for the right practice, our contest is 1,500 words. That's not very many words. And you really don't have that much space to pull off a lot of things. So keeping it really focused is really important. All right, what's another mistake that you see writers making, Sarah?
So this drives me nuts, and it's something that I used to do. And I think that's why it drives me so nuts. But this kind of goes to what you were saying about there being too much going on. If you're trying to fit a ton in your story, often by the time you get to the climax, it's like it comes out of nowhere and it's really rushed, it's really fast. And the ending is just kind of either not there, which is what I used to do. Weirdly, because I write predominantly horror. So I was always thinking that you needed to go for like this dun 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 moment at the end. So I would cut it off like in the middle of the climax. Like I'd have somebody have a knife and like be lunging at somebody and then fade to black. Right. So like that's not a story. That's literally cutting it off right when things are getting good. So because people try to put so much in, they often are doing that toward the beginning. And they're trying to world build. They're trying to do backgrounds, story on their main character, any kind of setting descriptions, stuff like that. And then they don't have the room for the ending and the climax. So that needs to cut some of that out up front, so you can give your climax and your ending a little bit more room to breathe.
I totally agree. I see so many endings that it's like, what is going to happen? That's you guys, you need to give us an ending. It doesn't need to be even that great of an ending, but it has to end, right? You have to tell us what happens next. Like, you don't know what's coming next idea, it sounds better in your head than how it reads to the judges. So give us an ending. I'm checking in the chat. I see Ray, not Lydia. So excited. Signed myself up yesterday. Welcome. That's awesome. Terry said, my last contest was grammar school, and that was in the late 50s. Hey, this is your chance to not make it another 50 years before you enter another writing contest. Why not? It'd be fun. Ginger has entered a few writing contests at the Right Practice. Hey, Ginger, great to see you. Gary, great to see you. I think I've submitted an entry to every Right Practice contest since I joined. That's true, Gary. And very impressive, I just want to say. I got honorable mention once, but that just makes me try harder. That's awesome. I think we're going to be looking at your story too a little bit later, Gary. Thanks. Cool. All right. So my last kind of mistake that I see writers making is just POV mistakes, right? Point of view. Point of view is something really simple. It's just like from the perspective that you're telling the story from. And a lot of times people will try to have like multiple point of views in a very short story, which is very difficult to pull off. Or they'll change point of views halfway through. And I just want to do that. Like, I think it makes it way harder to accomplish what you're trying to do in a short story. Like I said earlier, like, it's too much going on. Having multiple point of views is too much going on. So keep it simple, right? One point of view, keep it simple, and you'll be fine. All right. So now we just talked about how to lose a writing contest, right? Different mistakes people make. Not proofreading, not following the guidelines, trying to accomplish too much, having different point of views, not having an ending. So let's talk about how to actually win a writing contest. If you were giving feedback to someone who just really wanted to win, what would you tell them first, Sarah?
I'm really stuck on endings today. The ending, like that's the payoff, right? That's why we're there. That's why we read stories, period. We want the punchline. So having that great ending and having everything that built up to that, the ending has to make sense. Everything that was building up to that needs to lead inevitably to that ending. And it's got to have enough room in the story to make an impact. We also, like, one of my favorite things, especially on stories this short, is kind of repeating some kind of imagery in the end that you had at the beginning, kind of bringing it like full circle. I always think that's a really cool technique. And it shows a really tight and well done structurally story at that point as well.
Yeah. To that point, like, one thing a pattern that I've seen as I've judged writing contests is often the stories that place the best have sort of tragic endings. Like, it's hard to pull off a really happy ending in 1,500 words that feels really moving. And sometimes just having a sad ending, a tragic ending, makes it stand out a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, and you're like pulling at the judge's heartstrings at that point too.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I see that stories that do really well is that they have one interesting character. And to our point, again, too much going on. Having multiple characters, especially having multiple point of view characters, is a recipe for disaster. But having one interesting character, one unique character that you're really focusing on them and their lives, and some kind of situation that they're experiencing, makes for good short stories, good contest entries. What else, Sarah, do you think people need to do to have a winning story?
So when I was judging, I've judged like 5 or 6 of these. The most common thing that I think I saw that was so aggravating was there was no change from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. Stories are about change. There has to be a different kind of world order from the beginning to the end. And in a short story this short, 1,500 words is tight. So it doesn't have to be, some huge change. You probably actually don't have enough room to make a huge change believable, honestly. So it can be just like a tiny, tiny change, but something actually has to change. I see a lot of people doing kind of really beautiful writing, but it's not actually any kind of story because it's more of like just kind of an observational thing. And nothing happens, and there's no kind of forward progression, and there's absolutely zero difference from the beginning to the end. They're just kind of making observations about life.
No, I think that's an important point. Some kind of change, it can't stay the same throughout. Yeah. Another thing that I see is people trying to, and this is a problem, again, that I deal with personally. I'm really talking about my own experience here. But just having way too many scenes. So you have 1 or 2 scenes maximum, and really trying to figure out how can you tell a whole story in 1, maybe 2 scenes. That's a challenge. It's really hard to pull off, but your story will be so much more effective if you can figure out how to get it into 1 or 2 scenes. I've definitely tried to write like 12 scenes in a short story, and that would be more appropriate for a novella or a novel, and not so much for a short story. What else do you think, Sarah?
I wanted to add to that. What happened, why you only want 1 or 2 scenes is that, like, if you have multiples, if you try for like 12, they're very short and it's very choppy, and like it gets confusing. when you're reading it, and it kind of seems like it's all over the place.
Yep.
I want to take it back to the theme. The theme of ours this time is happily ever after. And I know that, there's going to be the judges will probably get a lot of fairy tale retellings, right? Weddings, meet cute kind of things, romance stories, right? And that's fine. But the judges, whatever like pops into your head first is probably what's going to pop into somebody else, like 100 other people's heads first, right? So you kind of want to, I kind of envision it kind of taking a step to the left of what pops into your head and kind of come at it at a different angle, and kind of twist the theme around, turn it on its head. I'm thinking specifically in for this theme, the breakup with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. It's the same kind of typical romance story, except in reverse. It's got the exact same scenes in it. They're just backwards. There's even a meet cute at the end. They run into each other on the street. So kind of just go with something that is known as a story type, but like come at it in a slightly different way and have a unique take on that theme so that your story actually stands out and doesn't just mix in with the 100 other people that came up with the same idea.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's so important. Okay, so this is probably one of the most common pieces of writing, creative writing advice anyway, given ever. But it's just show, don't tell, right? Show what's happening in the scene. Don't just tell us what's going on. Show us. And I think, in 1,500 words, that's can be hard to do, but it's also so important that the reader feels immersed into the story. And I think we're going to talk more about this as we're kind of critiquing a story, but we'll show you how that works. But show, don't just tell us, show us, and we'll talk more about that soon. What else, Sarah?
I just have one more thing. One final point. We all need feedback, and you've kind of hinted of what we're going to do for the rest of the time here. With that feedback, everybody needs feedback. I know it's kind of hard to take at times, especially if you're brand new to writing, haven't really shown anything to anybody. But you need feedback, and you need feedback from people that aren't your spouse or your family or your best friend or whatever, because they love you and they're just going to tell you, I love this. You're the best person ever. This is you're the next Stephen King, whatever. You need feedback from other writers.
They're just going to lie to your face is what you're saying.
Yeah. Just going to flat out lie. That's the thing. You need feedback from other writers. And that's been one of the most important things in my career, I think.
Right. Yeah. Feedback, both to win a contest and also to become a better writer. Right.
Yes.
It's such an important part of practice and improvement. All right. Well, with that in mind, and that's a beautiful segue. Thank you, Sarah, into our next part, which is we're actually going to take a look at some ideas and then hopefully a actual short story that are entered into this contest that we're hosting right now. And we'll kind of give you our take on whether they're working as stories and how we would, improve them and make them work better. Basically, whether they could win a writing contest. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll share these ideas with you, and we'll kind of go through them together, and you can see how we're looking at them. All right, so we'll start with this one from Gary, and I'll read it out loud and then go to you, Sarah, for your feedback. Of course, the evil bend in my mind says, but was it really happily ever after? The prince is a drunken sot. Ella is really a walking pile of complaints, not happy with anything. Both have hygiene problems. The prince's father gambles off the kingdom to Sir Simon Legree of Rotherham, leaving Ella and the prince worse off than her scullery origins. Oh, goodness. All right, Sarah, what do you think?
Gary. I love Gary. He's been around he cracks me up all the time. I love the both have hygiene problems thing. So obviously these are kind of like just general ideas that he was thinking. I know that he put it in the Facebook group. He was like, no, I'm not going to enter again. Yes, I am, kind of thing. So he's just kind of throwing some spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. But what I love about this is kind of what I was talking about before of like, these are different kind of takes on the theme. right? So like you don't have to necessarily have the meet cute or the wedding or whatever at the end of the story. You could do it backwards. You could show what happily ever after, you know, after the supposed happily ever after. And do kind of this thing where it's kind of the whole theme is kind of turned on its head. Now, the thing that I would caution with this is that if you go this way, you do need to still make sure that the judges know that it is clearly tied to the theme. You don't want to completely just kind of go completely the other way and just kind of that almost seems like snubbing the theme at that point. So like in this situation, you might want to start kind of back to the breakup kind of thing. You start off in the happily ever after bit of it, and then it declines from there, something like that. But I would definitely make sure that it still clearly aligns with the theme in some way, or it's not going to go very far in there.
Yeah. No, I really like this. And I like starting from happily ever after and then going to tragic. I think that's kind of a fun thing. One thing I would say is that this feels like it could be a little bit wide of scope, right? And you want to make sure to focus on a moment in the midst of all of these things happening. And so it might not be like, especially this part, the prince's father gambles off the kingdom. Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's a really interesting take and I want to see it, but I'm wondering if you can pull all of those things off, you know, showing that he's a drunken sot and that she's just complaining and they're both kind of smelly. And then like, can you do that in a moment, you know, like one evening, right? If you're showing that evening and showing one scene, that's my question. And I would challenge yourself to like get it down to an hour in their lives, right? Where all of this goes down. Cool. All right, let's go into Al's. A professional poker player must decide if he wants to give up his life on the professional poker circuit and his exotic lifestyle to become the guardian of his 16-year-old special needs sister, or place her in a state-run group home. Sarah?
I love this idea. I think this is a very common kind of, I'm assuming anyway, since these are just story ideas, like I have to assume some things. So I'm assuming that this guy is kind of, you know, selfish. And then ultimately he ends up deciding to take care of his sister and becomes unselfish, right? So we've seen this a lot. It's a standard story, which isn't to say that it's bad at all. There are no new stories. Everything's just like a rehash and a twist and mashup of everything else. So this one kind of reminds me of like Big Daddy with Adam Sandler. But so the thing that I think might be a bit of an issue with this one is this also seems like a huge scope, not in like external happenings, but in his change. So that's a pretty big, if it is the case that he kind of starts out as this selfish bachelor that does whatever he wants and has no ties, that's a pretty big like personality change and life change for him to be going through in 1,500 words. So I worry that, you know, by the time you get to the climax and he makes this decision, that everything that's leading up to that maybe hasn't quite built up to it properly, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. But I love the idea in general, and I think it can be pulled off.
Yeah.
It just might be a little difficult.
Yeah. How do you show his whole lifestyle on the poker circuit and then introduce his sister so we get a sense of who she is and then have this choice? Right. I think that's a good question. I think I really like how you're framing this in around a choice, because, you know, one thing that we talk a lot about at the Right Practice is the importance of dilemmas, right? And how kind of central to storytelling a good dilemma is, and how central to storytelling choice is for the main character. So you're already setting up this choice, and it's really great, brilliant. And yeah, so finding the scope, finding like where he is in the scene, and so that you can kind of show him make that choice in the moment, I think is going to be the challenge, but definitely something you can pull off, and it should be really good. Very cool, Al. Thanks for sharing that with us. All right, let's get into this next one from Arlo. It's a little bit longer. My story is titled The Girl in the Stained Glass Window. A man in a church service sees a young lady in front of the large stained glass window on the balcony. She resembles his long-lost fiancée who committed suicide decades before. A man resembling his younger self is standing beside her, and the older man fancies that he is seeing back in time to an alternate existence where his beloved did not die and the two were married as planned. He wonders if reality is fixed and changeable or if second chances are possible. The point of view shifts to the young man in the balcony beside his new wife. He sees an older lady beside the man downstairs and wondering if he is seeing into a possible future of himself and his spouse. In the climactic scene, the point of view shifts back to the older man on the ground floor. He points out the young couple to his wife of 40 years, and the two remark on the similarities of the pair to their younger selves and wish them long, happy lives as the two of them have had. All right, Sarah, what do you think?
This is really cute. It's heartwarming. I can see it. I noticed, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. I noticed there are two shifts in point of view through here. And so I want to talk about that a little bit more, about the issue with that. It's not just the space, it's also that it kind of muddles in your own mind as the writer who the story is actually about, right? So in this situation, I'm assuming it's about the older man, like he is the main character just because he's kind of the frame POV, right? But because it shifts, it kind of muddles that a little bit. And it also kind of, I'm not seeing a change here, really. I'm not seeing a choice or a change in his worldview from the beginning to the end. And I think that is because it's not focused enough on him. Yeah. And that happens with that POV shift.
It's almost like perspective itself is the main character, like the grass is always greener on the other side is the point of this story. And it's fine and interesting to have ideas that you want to infuse into your writing, and you still have to have a character that shows that change, right? And it feels like this is going to be challenging to pull off in the format for me. Would you say that's true, Sarah?
Yeah. I think I love the idea of it. I think that it's just not enough room, really. 1,500. Yeah. Like, I think that it's probably doable, but it's going to be a little rough, and especially for there to be an actual like progression of a story here, and it not just be more observational thinking kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty heady stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, could you do something where, I don't know. I'm trying to think about how I would like tweak this to get the same idea across. And I don't even know, because you're dealing with like massive time change, right? So even if you focus on just one character and have him like, even then you're still dealing with massive time change, like as a younger person than as the older person. So I don't know, Arlo. I might keep thinking on this one. All right. Hopefully that's not too discouraging, but yeah, I mean, I think the idea of perspective, like how can you take that idea of perspective and infuse it into one character and one moment, right? Not 80 years, right?
Yeah.
But one moment. All right. Ray, happily ever after, Cinderella's and Prince Charming are having problems. Cinderellas, I think. Is that how it's pronounced, maybe? And Prince Charming are having marital problems. Cinderella's has been disabled by an unknown curse, and the queendom is falling into chaos. The work it really takes to try to get to happily ever after from the perspective of Cinderella's in Dear Diary sequences. Okay, what do you think, Sarah?
All right, I'm going to start with the format of it, the diary sequences. Um, it's totally doable. It's been done. There's been whole novels written in diary sequences. The thing that you have to watch with them though is that it tends to lend more towards just like a regurgitation of what happened during the day instead of there being an actual arc and emotion in it and things like that, or it's all emotion and no arc at all. So it's totally doable, but I would make sure that there is an actual story happening there. um I love the idea here of them having marital problems. I'm really big into the fairy tale retellings, and then the darker the better kind of thing. I think I'm not 100% sure where the change is going to happen here or what the focus is. So like she is disabled by an unknown curse and the queendom is in chaos. But this also seems to be about their marriage. So I'm not sure which is the focus. It seems like dueling plots here. So I would focus on one, possibly maybe when she was disabled, she is like has to come to terms with that, and that it helps her marriage and helps her kingdom at the same time. But this seems like there might be a subplot there, and that is a big
Yeah.
no in
No
short fiction.
subplots.
No subplots.
Much to my
So,
sadness.
yeah, Joe loves his subplots. The more, the merrier. But especially 1,500 words, no subplot. So focus in on one or the other of those, I think.
Yep. No, I mean, I think this is really interesting, Ray, and you've got such interesting ideas. I like that it's the queendom, right? It's not the kingdom, it's the queendom. So that's super fun. And you're just kind of flipping the whole fairy tale on its head and doing it in a really interesting way. And I personally love epistolic, they call it, the epistolic narrative device of writing, diary entries. And whatever Sarah says about it, one of your favorite books, or at least most inspiring books, is Frankenstein, which is written as diary entries. So I don't know if you can
Yeah.
criticize it, Sarah.
Oh, I have the book I'm currently writing has it, but like it's just
See?
it gets a little dangerous. And I've seen it a bunch where people just kind of tell a lot of
Sure.
what happened that day.
That's definitely true. Yeah, you have to treat it like a device, not like something that you're doing all the time. I posted a link to a resource we have on the Right Practice about narrative devices. There are 9 narrative devices that you can use in your storytelling. And one of them is epistolic, and you can check it out on that guide. And we'll put that in the description as well. But I think what the danger of this is that you're going to have like 15 entries, right, into this diary in 1,500 words. And that is too many entries, right? You're going to be, it seems like that's kind of the direction you're going. And maybe I'm wrong, but, I want you to think about this as like 1, maybe 2 entries if you're going to do that, right? And so what can you pull off in 1 entry, right? How much story can you pull off? And it's probably not very much, right? And that's the whole point, right? We want to master like 1 moment here. And you need to nail that moment. It needs to be the best moment, the most important moment in this queen's life, right? Or at least an important moment, right? And so I just encourage you to really focus in on one thing, do a lot of showing, because the danger with the diary entries, like Sarah said, is telling, and you want to show, right? So have her be very descriptive, more descriptive than almost anyone would be in their actual diary, and show dialogue, and, just have it be like a real scene, but done with that narrative device. But yeah, I mean, I think the whole all the characters are interesting. The world's interesting. This might be more appropriate for a novella, right? Because you're biting a lot of story off here. But like, what moment can you choose from that whole thing and really hone in on? Okay. All right, let's take one more and then we'll jump into our story. Does that sound good, Sarah?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So this one's from John. A woman with a nearly perfect life has her luxury auto stolen. Oh no. The car is recovered, but it is damaged and will take some time to complete. The theft caused her to reconsider her own life. This soul searching causes her to confront who she is and who she wants to be. When the repairs are complete, she tells them she doesn't want it back. She doesn't need it any longer. All right. What do you think, Sarah?
So this is along those lines of another one of those selfish and then not selfish kind of stories, Ebenezer Scrooge kind of thing. So love the setup here. Love the fact that the car kind of represents her entire lifestyle, right? So love the symbolism there. I'm wondering how this is going to be written though, because it seems like there's a lot of like her car gets stolen and then she's waiting around to pick it up from the shop and she's just thinking. And I worry that there's not going to be enough actual story progression things happening in the story at that point if she's just thinking back. I also wonder if like I would assume she's going to be thinking about other things that have happened to her that make her question how she's living her life to lead up to that, because I highly doubt cars get stolen. So like, a car theft probably isn't going to set somebody off and change their whole life because of that. So I'm wondering if there are other things, maybe more of a linear story at that point, things happen to her over the course of a day or something that she's like, oh, wow, I'm a really bad person, or I'm living this bad life, or whatever it is. This is a big change in her too, right? So I really counsel you to kind of think of a smaller change than some kind of huge life changing, personality changing, major thing that happens to her, just because it's only 1,500 words. So it's really hard to pull off a major personality change in 1,500 words, and everything leading up to that makes sense of why they make that choice and why they change, and it not come out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think that this is an interesting take. I like what you said, Sarah, about kind of like the Ebenezer Scrooge arc, because you're right, it is. I mean, I think she is making that huge shift, and it's a cool shift. So I think that's fun. What you might do, if I were to do this, I think it would be 2 scenes, right? And I would have scene 1 be dropping off the car, right? And maybe talking to the person who is fixing the car about how it happened, right? And how important the car is to her. And maybe her being really stuck up to the guy, but the guy's really nice, right? I'm assuming maybe it's a female person who fixes cars. I don't know. But, and then the second scene is her going to pick up the car, and maybe she just pays the repairs and lets the person have it, right? Have the car. And he asks her why, and then she says why, so maybe they have some kind of interaction that is meaningful in the first scene. So something like that, just keep it really simple. Again, simple is important. So no, but I like it. I think that's fun, John, and I think you can pull it off. Good luck. All right, Sarah, let's change gears. And why don't we take a look at a full story? Okay. This one by Tom Housden. Okay. And I actually have to pull it up. I had the wrong story open. All right. And then, shoot. All right. There we go. All right. Maybe, Sarah, you could give us a quick summary of what's happening in this story by Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll talk about what we like and what we would suggest.
Okay. So the basic premise of this is there's this guy, Jack, who met Lucy online and they had a really great connection. And then she kind of ghosts him and he doesn't really understand why. And then she finally comes back on. He's like waiting on her to be online, just kind of messing around, hoping she shows back up. And then she finally shows back up and he asks her why she disappeared. And then she says she has cerebral palsy and scoliosis. And there's a little bit of a confusion here at the end over who's talking. So I believe it's her. And then he says, I don't care. Let's meet anyway. So it reminds me of that there's an old movie. I can't remember what it's called, where the woman gets hit by a cab and then she ghosts her fiance and then he shows up and they're all like in love again. And he's like, I don't care. It reminds me of that.
Yeah. And it turns out that he has a disability too.
Yeah. Is that what's going on there at the end? Okay. Yeah. I think the last couple paragraphs are a little
right.
Confusing.
Well, let's talk about that more as we get into it. But yeah, like you said, this couple meets, they like each other online, but they haven't met in real life. And then he's wondering if she's real after she disappears or if she's catfishing him. And then it turns out she has a disability. And oh, by the way, it's great because he does too. So it's actually a sweet story. And very heartwarming at the end. All right, so let's talk about this. What are some things that you like about this story so far?
So, like you said, it is a very sweet story. It's fairly well rounded. We have a nice setup with Jack. And the ending hits pretty hard, mm-hmm. But I think that this is going back to what I was talking about with the endings before and people liking to put a lot of stuff up front. So there's a lot of this intro here that can be cut. They spend a lot of time on describing this guy's perfect woman. I'm not sure that's really necessary in there. This very first top thing, it's a good hook, but I'm not sure that it's really needed. I assume it was what their mother actually said to them. So like, if you want to honor mom, maybe try and weave it in there a little later, but that almost sets the story up like he's going to be fighting a computer, kind of thing. So, and that's obviously not the case.
Right.
Let's see what else. Yeah. There's just a lot of setup there that can probably be cut when you're thinking about this stuff. Everybody starts stories this way, and then they end up squeezing the ending in within a short word count. But we start stories this way because we're mostly used to reading novels and they kind of bloom, I guess, over a period of time. And that's how we're used to things kind of unfolding. And in short stories, the trick is that you have to hit the ground running like immediately. And you don't have a lot of time for this like backstory and the world building or anything like that. You actually just need to kind of weave that in a line or two here and there as you go along. So think of it, as you're going through, does the reader have to know this information right now for the story to make sense? If they don't, then get rid of it. Okay. So like, the description of his perfect woman, basically, you could just boil that down to, he thought she was really hot. Like we don't need to do like a whole paragraph of it. And things like that. You can kind of get the thing moving a little bit more because the short story needs to continue to move and we don't want to go back at all and like stagnate. Otherwise the pacing is really off. And if you get rid of some of that up front, you're going to be able to kind of make this ending here, this climax that is really heartwarming, hit even harder. Because it'll have a little bit more room to breathe and it'll be a little bit more impactful in that situation.
Yeah, agreed. So for me, like you said, Sarah, I actually really love the ending. I think it's really good. So kudos there. Jack is interesting. Lucy seems great. So I think we have a good character. And you are doing a lot of telling. right? Almost this whole story is telling, like literally at the beginning, all he is doing is like tossing and turning for a long time. And then you're telling your way, but while you're telling, he's just in bed. As we're getting this, as the reader is getting all this information, we're just in bed. And until this point, like he remembers something she said, and then he goes to sleep. So all of this, like, just look at that. All of this is telling. And you don't want to start a story like that, right? With 800 words of telling. Maybe that's not 800, maybe 700. I don't know. I don't have a word count thing on this, but you get what I'm saying, right? I think you need to get into a scene sooner, like right away, you know? And the scene is not him just like tossing and turning in bed. Okay. So maybe it's them interacting in the chat room. Maybe it's like they're about to meet for the first time, right? And then he's thinking about, as he's about to meet her, and then he can be thinking about like how they first met, right? On the chat room. And he's wondering all these things about, is she catfishing him? And, you know, then when she shows up, you have an opportunity to have him be surprised and her be surprised, right? So I would just look for more opportunities. I think the character is interesting. All of this is interesting. It's just that it's all done from a telling perspective. Like you even get back. So let's say that this is the end of the first scene. Like the first scene is just how they met, and he's just kind of describing himself, and basically he's just sitting in bed and going to sleep, right? That's scene one, right? So scene two, his alarm clock, he logs into the chat room, she's not there, you know. That's I think that's interesting. Maybe not the best scene for this story, but it's fine, you know. And then that's the end of that scene. She's not there. And then you have scene three here, and he doesn't hear from her. And then finally he hears from her, and she makes her confession, and he responds to it, you know? So 3 scenes instead of 1 or 2. So I would shorten it down to 1 or 2, right? And then just find a place in the midst of all that timeline. You know, this is over like 4 days, right? Because the first scene is him sleeping, second scene is the next day, and then 3 days later, right? So 4 days, find one moment in that timeline that you can really focus on. And my guess is that it's either like as they're in the chat room and he's waiting for her to respond or something, or maybe they decide to meet for their first date, you know, and then you're kind of doing the build up to that. I think that could be really cool. Any thoughts on that, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm like scrolling down through here. I think I would actually probably start the whole story at, he scanned down the list of usernames on the side of the screen. Leanne, Lizzie, even Lulabelle, but no Lucy. Like that far down, I think is where
Yeah, that's right.
you're looking at actually starting the story. The whole sleeping thing, authors love doing that for some reason, to the point where it's become super cliche.
Yeah.
And it's basically a no-no. Don't start a story with anybody waking up. Don't have them tossing and turning in bed. Just stay out of bed in general, away from any kind of sleep. No sleeping, no subplots, no sleeping.
Well, you know, I just want, like, what this is feedback I give all the time. You know, think about where your character is when you are telling things, when you're giving information, right? And if they're not doing anything interesting, cut that part, right? He's just literally tossing in bed, you know, tossing and turning in bed. Like, you can do better than that, you know? And you can even have flashbacks. You can even give exposition and have interesting things to share. You know, interesting exposition. Some of this stuff you can save, but just it can't be while he's going to sleep. You know, you got to find a better moment to begin. So That's my feedback. I think this is really good. I really do. So I think, but like Sarah said, like somewhere in here is where you really want to start the story. Okay. Personally, I would start at the first date, but Sarah would do it in the chat room. I don't know. She's won more contests than me. You probably should listen to her. I'm pretty smart though, but
Yeah,
gotta go with
it's all
Sarah.
right.
All right, everyone. This was super fun. I hope that was helpful. I hope you got some ideas. If you don't have an idea for your story yet, I hope you see kind of how we're thinking about these stories and what really makes these stories work and how they win writing contests. Thank you for all of you who shared your ideas. Thank you for sharing them and for being willing to get feedback. I know maybe it wasn't comfortable for you, but we all need feedback, and this is our chance to get better. So thanks for being brave, and hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully, you're able to take it and make it a little bit better and maybe win a writing contest. That would be really cool, right? All right. I think that's it from us. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing all of that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys again